It's time for the moment you've been waiting for. Da, 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 da.
In no specific order, the criteria for the diets will be as follows: micronutrient adequacy, protein, sustainability, and amount of processed food, especially polyunsaturated fats. If you're wondering about any of our criteria, it's best to check out our other videos where we go deep into the science. Another note is that we will not focus on practices like intermittent fasting or calorie restriction because they can be implemented into pretty much all of these. We will focus on the actual composition of the foods that will be eaten. Let's get to the tier list. Starting at the very bottom, we have the fruitarian diet. All you need to do is look at the people who practice this so-called way of eating to realize that it is probably not what you should be doing. Adherents to this diet only eat fruit and as a result become severely malnourished. These lunatics have even fed infants the diet, and unfortunately these poor children could not make it. Also in F tier we have standard veganism. This way of eating includes many processed foods, no supplementation, and will lead to various nutrient deficiencies: iron, B12, protein, zinc, and the list goes on. The worst part about this way of eating is that not only will you be very unhealthy, you'll also have the uncontrollable urge to flex your perceived moral superiority over everyone in the process. A step up from the fruitarian diet, but not by much. Basically, the standard American diet minus the animal foods, and maybe some more veggies. Either way, it sucks. F. Slightly above the standard vegan diet at the bottom is the standard American diet. I think everyone is in agreement that processed foods are generally not healthy, and the standard American diet has more than 60% of calories coming from processed food alone. Consequently, about 60% of Americans have at least one chronic disease. Honestly, choosing between the standard American diet and the fruitarian diet is really a matter of whether you want to starve to death or eat to death. Either way, horrible ways of eating that nobody should partake in. Moving on to D tier, we have the DASH diet. This is basically the original food pyramid that we were all taught growing up. Mostly grains like bread and pasta, along with whole fruits and veggies. This diet is also low in animal foods, fat, and salt. But I guess that's better than the same thing but with more vegetable oil. This diet is intended to address high blood pressure, and in experiments, it has shown promise in being able to do so. However, these are confounded by the fact that they often restrict calories. There's also way more to consider than just blood pressure when it comes to health. Overall, definitely better than the atrocities below it, but we can do much better. Next, we have the monotrophic diets. These diets entail eating only one food. This is pretty variable, as it could mean you only eat potatoes, or you only eat steak, or many other singular foods. We averaged the variety of different foods to come up with this result. While only eating steak is not optimal, it would definitely rank higher in the list, while only eating potatoes would rank lower. Multiple foods should be included in a diet to meet proper macro and micronutrient needs. It's also obviously as strict as it gets, which makes it damn near impossible to do long term. The rice diet is a bit of a quandary. It was used in the 30s and 40s to treat patients with metabolic disease, and was basically sugar, juice, fruit, and rice. Surprisingly, it did work pretty damn well for what it was intended for. However, it was never meant to be consumed long term. Obviously, the lack of nutrients, protein, and overall variety make this incredibly unsustainable, but in the short term, it does work. We'll put it in high D tier. Okay, let's move up to C tier. At the bottom of C, we have whole foods plant-based. This diet restricts processed foods such as refined grains, seed oils, and sugar. It also adds in proper supplementation for the missing nutrients. While the subtraction of animal products from the diet is far from ideal, and proper supplementation is very complicated, adherents to this diet could definitely improve their health as opposed to the lower ranked ones. Next up in the C tier is the zone diet. This diet has the big advantage of being high in protein at about 30% of calories. However, it takes the approach of eating lean protein and then adding fat like nuts on top, which in our minds is a negative. Still, the diet does cut processed food and should be nutritionally adequate besides the fat-soluble vitamins. Of the zone diet, we have IIFYM, better known as If It Fits Your Macros. This diet is popular among bodybuilders and definitely works for building muscle and cutting fat. However, the way this diet is usually practiced ignores micronutrients, bioavailability, and the types of macros.
Pop-Tarts.
Adherents to this diet do not distinguish between fat coming from coconut oil versus fat from soybean oil, highly bioavailable animal protein versus less available plant protein, or refined versus whole carbohydrates. It's also really annoying to have to weigh and track your food constantly, and even then, it's unreliable.
Weighing every gram of every nutrient, counting every calorie, you are the accountant of fitness.
For these reasons, the popular If It Fits Your Macros diet ranks mid-C tier. Another C tier diet is the vegetarian diet. We're going to assume that the diet is made up of whole foods because in most cases it seems like vegetarians are concerned with their health, while most vegans do it for ethical reasons. The vegetarian diet obviously has the drawback of not having any animal meat or organs, which are nutrient-rich and high in protein. On the plus side, eggs and dairy are on the menu, which somewhat makes up for it. Sure, vegetarians will have their fair share of not-so-healthy meals, but for the most part, it's low-processed food, so again, another plus. Next, we have the South Beach diet. On the surface, it seems pretty decent. It has multiple phases, but for brevity, we will include the main points. It is relatively low in carbohydrate in comparison to a Western diet, but they are still included. Adherents are to consume a solid amount of lean protein and limit sugar, which is good. However, instead of fatty meats and saturated fats, they are told to eat both monounsaturated fats and seed oils. They can also consume whole grain carbohydrates and carbs like corn. Also, they can eat soy proteins. Like If It Fits Your Macros, this diet can be good for body composition, but not for long-term health. Now we move on to low B tier, where we have the pescatarian diet. This is similar to the vegetarian diet, where adherents consume eggs and dairy, but they also consume fish. Fish tend to be highly nutrient dense and serve as decent substitutes for meats. However, their high polyunsaturated fat and heavy metal content make them less than ideal to eat multiple times a day. Those following this diet can be healthy when they do it right, but you're still better off eating good old meat. The Mediterranean diet is the media's golden child, but is somewhat difficult to define. This diet is high in fruits and veggies, has some grains, whole animal foods, dairy, and olive oil. While it sounds pretty good from the start, it does have a severe restriction on red meat and thus organs, which again are some of the healthiest foods out there. On the plus side, it should be relatively low in polyunsaturated fat because of the olive oil emphasis and again cuts processed junk. Sustainable and healthy, the Mediterranean diet is solid B tier. Above the Mediterranean diet, we have everyone's favorite, the keto diet. Generally, adherents do consume a high amount of animal products. However, often processed keto foods are included in the diet, which tend to be loaded with artificial sweeteners and additives. The magic weight loss aspects of the diet come from the elimination of carbohydrates, which could be very effective short term, but a lack of any carbs in the diet can lead to several problems down the road. Sometimes, adherents even consume seed oils because they are technically ketogenic. Doing keto like this would rank it much lower in the list. Another problem is that protein is usually lacking in substitution for higher fat for more ketone production. But honestly, unless you have a medical issue that benefits from therapeutic ketosis, it's kind of pointless. Also, high amounts of vegetables are often consumed by adherents, which can many times do more harm than good because of their high anti-nutrient content. Next is the increasingly popular protein to energy ratio diet from Dr. Ted Naiman. The diet essentially says forget about everything except for the ratio of protein to carbs and fat. The higher the ratio, the better it is for weight loss, with a ratio of 1 being maintenance. It's easy to do and works very well for body composition goals. The only thing keeping this from being A tier is the fact that it doesn't care about the source of food. This means protein shakes are the same as whole food protein, and seed oils are the same as saturated fats. Typically, people who follow this diet are eating high-quality food as well, so normally that isn't a problem. Also, having one eating rule makes it easy to follow. The first A-tier diet is the autoimmune protocol and the Whole30 diet, which are very similar. The diet has 2 phases. In the first phase, you cut out basically everything that might trigger some type of immune response like gluten, nuts, dairy, and even eggs. Then, once you've reached some sort of homeostasis, you begin to reintroduce foods slowly to gauge what is giving you trouble. Even if you don't have an autoimmune disease, this can be incredibly helpful in lowering inflammation and learning what food works for you. It also by nature cuts out processed food and emphasizes the highest quality foods. The only drawback is that it is very restrictive and can be tough to follow, but if you can do it, it's a great way of eating. The paleo diet is one of the most popular diets there is, and for good reason. It sticks to one rule: eat like your ancestors. While this is kind of vague, it essentially means eating real food, plant or animal, high carb or high fat, which allows you to be flexible with it.
Well, paleo's real simple. It's not going to do any damage. Paleo is just real food. Paleo just means no grain and no rice. That's all it means.
Yeah,
And
but
just no preservatives, just meat, chicken, fish, vegetables. Meat, chicken, fish, vegetables, there's nothing wrong with that.
The only real issue I see is that it eliminates some really good foods for no reason, like dairy and potatoes. Also, even some ancestrally appropriate food can cause problems. All in all though, you still have a pretty kick-ass diet. Next in A tier is Stan Efferding's vertical diet. I mean, just look at this guy.
If you don't mind, I'm going to sit here and look at you for a little bit. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Don't you want to have whatever he's having? This diet is designed to be high in protein and micronutrients and easy on the gut. It's mainly rice and red meat. Then eggs, dairy, seafood, and easy to digest fruits and veggies are added to hit all the micronutrients. Your fat will be of the high saturated variety. There's really nothing lacking here at all, although it's a little more complicated to follow. Moving on in A tier, there's the Atkins diet, which fixes the lower protein problem of keto. The vertical and Atkins diets are pretty neck and neck, with the former being better for building muscle and the latter being better for cutting fat. Like the South Beach diet, there are different phases involved that will be summed up. Adherents to Atkins avoid sugar, grains, and seed oils. The diet is based on meat, fish, eggs, dairy, green vegetables, and other mono and saturated fats. Nuts and seeds are included though, which may be a problem. The Atkins diet is more specific in its approach of limiting seed oils and processed foods, which puts it one step ahead of keto. The Atkins diet also has people reintroduce as many healthy carbs as they can handle without gaining weight, another benefit over the strict low-carb for life ketogenic approach. There's a reason all of the elites hated Robert Atkins, may he rest in peace. Stay away from products branded with Atkins though. These are not part of the true Atkins diet, and I bet he's rolling in his grave. The top of A tier features the one, the only, carnivore diet.
Look, there's people that eat carnivore diet. This is the most recent one where they only eat meat.
More specifically, this will be the Whole Foods animal-based diet. This means meat, organs, eggs, dairy, and seafood are going to make up the vast majority of the food you eat, which is good because those are the highest protein and most nutrient-dense foods there are. Bees are animals too, and that means honey is good to go, so it doesn't have the potential negatives of excluding carbs from the diet forever. The criticisms of a diverse and honey-inclusive animal foods-only diet are extremely nitpicky and honestly don't hold much weight. Fiber and phytonutrients are a scam anyway. The only possible downside is that the diet is pretty hard to adhere to for the average person. Finally, we arrive at the S tier. The absolute cream of the crop, greatest diet of all time. The breatharian diet. This diet is so good that it doesn't even exist. That's right, you won't be eating or drinking anything at all. You become one with nature and will get all of your nutrition from the sun and the air. The weight loss benefits are second to none, and if you do it long enough, you will literally meet Jesus. In all seriousness, the only S tier diet is the Analyze and Optimize diet. This is whatever diet is best for you. We all have different genetic and lifestyle factors, so there is no one-size-fits-all way of eating. Though we ranked these diets in terms of what we believe is the best for the average person, there's an infinite number of variables that can influence what diet works for you. It'll probably change as time goes on and as your body changes and you learn more. So don't be dogmatic about any single diet and realize that whatever combination of diet optimizes you is going to be the best approach. If you want to see more tier list videos, let us know in the comments and subscribe to the channel.